Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our weekly live question and answer series. Just a heads up, this is being recorded today. We're experiencing some issues with streaming live on YouTube. So rather than not do a session, we're going to record. Dr. Althorpe is going to present some topics, and we'll post that later on today. If you're trying to log in and watch us live, I do apologize for the difficulty. We will be back next week at our regular scheduled time, 9:45 a.m. Pacific. So stay tuned, and to stay up to date with all of our information, anything that's going on at the office or any new videos that we're doing, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, on YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel. Click that button, and if you like, click the bell icon next to that. That'll notify you as soon as something gets posted. We don't just post the live sessions, we also sometimes do little topics where I pull some of our other providers and we do a little overview. So that's one way to stay on top. The other thing that you can do is go to our website, www.tlcdoctors.com, and on there look for the area where you can join our email list. Every week we send at least one email out with lots of great information, and we let you know what we're doing on YouTube or any videos or anything like that. Dr. Althorpe, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Talon.
I know you came prepared with some topics, and just a heads up and a quick disclaimer, Dr. Althorpe and the staff here, we're sharing our opinions on current events and news as it relates to healthcare, and this is meant to be for your benefit. We love it when this is interactive. You ask us questions, and we're sharing general information. This does not replace your relationship with your provider. We recommend that any specific medical questions really be followed up with your doctor, and we're here and available for that. We're seeing patients in person as well as via telehealth, and currently, because of the COVID pandemic, that is billable to most insurances. So Dr. Althorpe, what do you have for us today?
Well, I should start probably with a correction from last week.
Okay.
When you were asking me a question from someone about deuterium.
Yes.
And my brain just went to the dirty uranium and
right.
exposure. Deuterium is about hydrogen and heavy water. And that's where an extra hydrogen is part of that water molecular structure. I'm not an expert on this, but I understand enough about alkalinization of water and the importance of water and hydration and hydrogen in the physiology that with what little time I had to look into it, because it kept on coming up after the video that I think I made a mistake on what the question was. Hydrogen is a positive element, and a positive element helps with being like a free radical electron donor, a neutralizer. And so we drink our water to help on many levels, one of which is it is able to be a sink for negative ions, or donate a electron for free radical quelching.
So it's effectively antioxidant water when you have that extra hydrogen.
That's a good way to put it. It's an antioxidant water. So the theory of deuterium is if you drink this type of water, and there are thoughts for those who ascribe to the earth was made in 6 days in God, and that after the flood there was a difference in the environment. So the thought was that maybe water back then and the long ages of Adam and Enoch and Methuselah and everything might have also been due to the fact that they had a water supply that was heavy water, in the sense with an extra hydrogen more closely associated to it, which would slow the free radical oxidizing agents in our body. So I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of alkalized water. I'm in favor of extra hydrogen with it.
I remember several years ago here we were really looking deeply into the alkaline water research and the claims being made by some of these companies.
And we did a study on it.
Right, we did our own internal studies here on water. We still have an ORP meter, the oxidative reduction potential meter, that measures just that, the free hydrogen or the extra
Yes,
hydrogen, and you get a
yes.
numerical score for that.
Yes.
So that definitely does ring a bell. Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up. That is one of the flaws of being live, but I appreciate you being open and honest, and we just misunderstood something and correcting it here today.
Yeah. So I thought I would bring up when I started this series, I think the second one I did in the first week of February of 2020, I brought up MedCram, MEDCRAM, with Dr. Sleuth. And on the 10th of December, he put up a video on vitamin D and prevention of COVID and prevention of upper respiratory diseases and many other benefits. And I want to direct the audience to go on your YouTube and put in MedCram and look for December 10th, his vitamin D article.
That's December 10th of this year?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, just 6 days ago.
Okay.
There were so many articles on there, it would be impossible for me on this time frame to go over them. But I picked a few of them topically. There were 25, and so I just want to bring up, I got the top pages of them rather than trying to read the whole thing. Clinical Journal of Clinical Investigation of October 1985. So we're going into the Wayback Time machine here. And they knew as far back as then that aging decreases the capacity of the human skin to produce vitamin D3. And the point of it was a comparison of the amount of vitamin D3 produced in the skin from the 8 and 18-year-old subjects with the amount produced in the skin from the 77 and 82-year-old subjects revealed that aging can decrease by greater than twofold the capacity of the skin to produce vitamin D3, the pre-vitamin.
200% decrease.
Right, 200%. That's the Journal of Clinical Investigation, 1985, October. And so with that in mind, going also in the Wayback Machine, there was an article about the National Human Activity Pattern Survey, NHAPS, a resource for assessing exposure to environmental pollutants. This was published by our EPA, Department of Environmental Protection Agency, Journal of Exposure Analysis and Environmental Epidemiology, 2001. And in it, this January 2001 article, they said basically people are spending an average of 87% of their time in enclosed buildings, 6% additionally in their enclosed vehicles. And so if you think going outside in the sunshine is enough for trying to get vitamin D, and if you're older, we're inside too much, okay? Being outside. So this is the Wayback Machine. Now let's go into some other articles that I thought, but there's 25 of them and every one of them were good. This article was published September 17th, 2010. And this is an article saying racial differences in the relationship between vitamin D, bone mineral density, and parathyroid hormone in the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which I often refer to. And basically the results were showing that Black and Mexican Americans had significantly lower vitamin D levels, okay? The other article was the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Volume 72, Issue 3, published 1st of September 2000. Again, this is old. Obese subjects had significantly lower basal 25-hydroxy vitamin D concentrations. All right, so if you're Black, if you're darker skinned Hispanic, if you're obese, if you're older, if you're elder, if you're indoors all the time, your vitamin D is going to be very low.
Right.
Now, we've been here 20 years, but for 40 years almost in practicing medicine, I've known about this. And I've always been supplementing vitamin D. And I think that's why all my patients did so very well. And I have the elderly, I have the Black, I have Hispanic,
right.
And we just have had no problem with any COVID-19.
And I know you, having worked beside you for many, many years, you've always been pushing the envelope per se in terms of your recommendations for dosing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a decade-ish or so ago, it was pretty, I don't want to say controversial, but you would put patients on 5,000 or even 10,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, and that at the time we had patients saying, whoa, you know, my vitamin that my other doctor gave me or that I got at GNC has, you know,
400 or
800 IUs a day.
Yeah, not even 1,000.
Right, but now the research has come full circle to really support that.
Yes, it's really matured. There are a plethora of publications, and especially since this year, COVID-19, even dosing on the initial presentation to the hospitalization for respiratory distress, units as high as 50,000. And to point to that, there is an article saying vitamin D insufficiency and deficiency and mortality, death from respiratory diseases in a cohort of older adults, potential for limiting the death toll during and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is in Nutrients 2020, and basically it was published August 18th, 2020 in Nutrients. So that's a long title. Basically, they said, we assess the prevalence of vitamin D insufficiency and deficiency and their association with mortality from respiratory diseases, not just COVID-19.
Okay.
During 15 years of follow-up in a cohort of 9,548 adults aged 50 to 75 from Saarland, Germany. And the result, vitamin D insufficiency and deficiency are common and account for a large portion of the respiratory disease mortality in older adults, supporting the hypothesis that vitamin D supplementation could be helpful to limit the burden of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this was published in August of 2020, but this is a study that did a 15 years, prospective watching these people. And what they did on one of their graphs was they looked at the blood levels of the vitamin D, and basically more than 50% of them were insufficient or deficient. And they really found it that back then in the Wayback Machine, they knew that you needed to be closer to 55, 60 on your vitamin D level way back then.
Right.
To have a resiliency against these upper respiratory illnesses.
And that's in the face of a LabCorp or Quest result or your typical primary care doctor. If you're under, or if you're between what and what do they consider normal? It's very low, 20?
Right, no, 30 is the cutoff now, and they put 60 on most of the top limits.
They have adjusted it up, but it's still
It used to be lower years ago, right. But what they're saying, that's just the middle of the aisle. When you see the great resiliency, you're seeing levels that are closer to 80, 90. And so I try and get all my patients above 80.
Okay.
And maybe that's why we had such fantastic results, because we've all had them all on this. We've attacked the weight issue, the carbohydrate, because vitamin D is fat soluble. And they found in other studies, if you go to that MedCram and you listen to this lecture, and you can go down in the Show More indicator and pick up the article, if you're obese with a BMI above 30, then your need for vitamin D dosing by unit is higher almost by threefold.
Wow.
Yeah, because that vitamin D goes into the fat and sits there. Between ideal and just overweight, you needed 1.5 times the amount. And then this last article is entitled "A Vitamin D Supplementation to Prevent Acute Respiratory Tract Infections, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis of Individual Participant Data," published in the British Medical Journal of 2017, long before COVID, okay? And essentially, this is a review of 25 eligible randomized controlled trials. So we're talking lots and lots, and it involved 11,321 participants, 0 to 95 years old. And the conclusion is vitamin D supplementation was safe, and it protected against acute respiratory tract infections overall.
Okay.
I really don't understand all this conversation about vaccine or no vaccine. Should I take even hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin? Should I go out or shouldn't I go out? Should I see my grandchild or shouldn't I? Should we have a lockdown or shouldn't we? We need to get the medical and healthcare system talking about what works preventatively.
Right.
And if we know that the older you get, the most likely cause of death for the very elderly is some upper respiratory infection on top of their other comorbidities they've accumulated with aging.
Right.
And that usually takes them out. And we always see a seasonal uptick every winter, fall season. And that's the large majority of it. Why are we not hearing them talk about vitamin D?
Right.
Why are we not hearing them talk about don't be obese? Why are we not hearing them talk about if you're black or Hispanic, you have a higher risk, as well? Why are they not talking about these other things like vitamin C and quercetin, over-the-counter natural herbs? Why are they not talking about zinc on a repetitive? Because we can see tremendous, there's 25 articles on that one program from December 10th,
Right.
just showing the dramatic protection given to the elderly.
It really does. It really does frustrate me, having been around medicine my whole life. Especially in the United States, we are such an innovative country that is developing new and amazing technologies. And I would not rather be in any other country in the world if I had a medical emergency than the United States. However, this industry just seems so slow to move to recognize nutrition and prevention of disease. When the science and the data, the research is there, so you ask, why is the focus not there? I don't know why.
I think it's money.
Well, you look at I had a stint in fire science, and I went through the fire academy, and we looked at the history of fire suppression, and most of it was centered around as technology grew in our understanding of prevention of fire, and the focus is on the prevention and the building code, and using materials and techniques that slow or stop or mitigate fire risk, and we saw mortality decrease dramatically. Whole cities used to burn a couple centuries ago, and now there's still fires and there's still devastation, but it is really minimized. Yes, we have technology to attack a fire quickly, but that can never replace being on the forefront of prevention. Why hasn't healthcare done a similar turnaround and focus on prevention?
Probably because of pharmaceutical lobbyists lobbying our legislators and having, their hands on the scale, and the American public being, uninformed. And I can just tell you, medical schools training for your physician, their idea of prevention is a vaccine schedule of 79 different vaccines today,
right,
from birth to age 18. That's their concept of, oh, we taught prevention. Mm-hmm. No, so again, I don't want to hear vaccine or no vaccine, or lockdown or no lockdown, until we can be discussing things that have decades. And last week we talked about how the plumbers got sanitation, and the carpenters and the cleaning and the truck drivers brought the oranges in a time of peace and prosperity.
Right.
It's nutrition and sanitation that really wipes out all these horrible infectious diseases and infant mortality. Hands down, that's history, that's fact, you can't argue it.
Right.
And if you don't even bring it up, I have to second guess your motive for why you're promoting what you're promoting.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is important. Physicians are not trained in this.
No.
It is not part of medical school to do a deep dive into prevention and nutrition and lifestyle and the bodies of research and decades of research on nutraceuticals. And it's like if you, it's poo-pooed by most doctors if you say, well, I heard, vitamin D might be good for me. And you go to any typical doctor and, oh yeah, maybe a little bit of this, maybe a little of that, but it's just kind of like put down, unfortunately.
Then don't call it a healthcare system. Don't call it a healthcare system. Call it a disease management program. I am going to go to not medical school, I'm going to go to a disease management training school.
Right. And it's geared to highly specialize physicians into a specialty of neurology, dermatology, gynecology. And the general practitioner, the family medicine physician is a dying breed, unfortunately.
Yes, and they've been basically relegated to just being doorkeepers for, you go to rheumatology, you go to gastroenterology, you go to neurology, rather than trying to raise up their population into a healthy, resilient people. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, the point at the beginning of this was, hey, go check out MedCram, look it up on YouTube, look for that December 10th posting where he just dives into vitamin D for more information there. We just listed a couple of the studies that were mentioned in that video, but we've been talking about vitamin D supplementation for your immune system, and it doesn't just help your immune system. Vitamin D is it's closer maybe to a hormone than it is a vitamin.
Yes, in fact, there's now clear science that shows vitamin D has receptors on your white blood cells, lymphocytes, both in the innate and the adaptive immune arms, and this has impact on helping that white blood cell make certain little elements called Quercetins, which are molecules of attack against viruses, and so it's quite a wonderful hormone called a vitamin.
Right.
And remember, it's made of cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
And they frightened everyone away from eggs and fat, in their diet.
So
and everyone,
no surprise we have such low vitamin D levels.
By the way, you want to know what they found blocks the conversion of pre-vitamin D to the active form of 1,25-hydroxy vitamin D?
No.
Guess.
What blocks it?
Uh-huh.
Fructose?
Yes!
I got it?
Yes, high fructose corn syrup in particular is the blocking agent found to stop the conversion of pre-vitamin D into the active form. So it's almost as if someone designed to get us indoors, playing on our YouTubes and our devices, getting us out of the light, getting us away from eating cholesterol, getting us eating high fructose corn syrup lattes and juices, and our children.
It into things you wouldn't expect it to be in.
Right.
You had that look in your eye. I know how much you hate fructose, so I had a feeling that was the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, and vitamin D is wonderful, and it is only one of the tools in our preventative arsenal. Doctor, just to end this conversation for today, why don't you remind us, and for those that haven't heard, what is your typical preventative, pandemic recommendation, things you feel like everybody should be taking?
I think you should be on vitamin D, either 5 or 10,000 international units a day with K2. Mm-hmm. And you should take a multivitamin mineral that has zinc in it. If you've been on this all along and it has anywhere from 5 to 10 milligrams, you're probably just fine with the vitamin D. But if you haven't been, you could buy a supplemental 25 to 50 milligram zinc chelate with it. I would take systemic enzymes. Remember, the unique thing about the COVID-19 viral respiratory distress scenario is that it's associated with hypercoagulability. And so we have almost everyone on systemic enzymes, Vitalzyme, Vascuzyme, Proteozyme here. Be well hydrated. Get a good night's sleep, because that's when you eat. Be on a low-carb diet. Do some intermittent fasting, yes, or a fast 1 day a week, or occasional prolonged fast for 2 days or 3 days, once a month.
How about quercetin?
Quercetin is excellent. I would be on 250 milligrams to 400 or up to 600. We have the DHIST, and that's what I use, 2 of those a day, or Allard DHQ, 1 a day. I use all 3. Okay. So zinc, quercetin, vitamin D, vitamin C. I have the powdered 4 gram per scoop, but we have the buffered little tablets as well. Right. And all the things that I've mentioned. Do not eat late at night, because your body needs to heal at night, not be working on late night snacks and late meals in your stomach.
And we're in the midst of the holidays right now, and it's important to remember, let your Christmas celebration be your Christmas dinner, but don't let that diet and those treats spill into multiple days of the week. Why? Because sugar and these high-carb diets, they depress your immune system. They make you vulnerable to catching a virus, an infection.
Right.
Okay. Well, that was a lot of information today, a lot of focus on vitamin D. Sorry that the live stream was not working out, but hopefully you find this video valuable. If you do, please give us a like, a thumbs up on it, and remember to subscribe to our channel. We will be here next week at 9:45 a.m. Pacific. Hopefully everything is working then, and then we can look to receive your questions live and in real time and answer them for you. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next week.